Good evening, everyone. She's the author of 7 books. Most recently, the novels The Best Kind of People and Holding Still for as Long as Possible. Please welcome your host, Zoe Whittle.
Good evening, everyone. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather tonight as the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit. We acknowledge these nations and any other Indigenous peoples, including the Métis, who have called this land home. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging, and we are grateful for their stories and the opportunity to create, live, learn, read, and write on this land together. Welcome to the Writers' Trust Awards. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad you're all kind of a blur, because otherwise I would be a bit more nervous. In this intensifying era of unrest, with the repression of writers and journalists all over the world, a night to honor writers is truly a thing to celebrate. So many of us work in isolation, so this opportunity to reward hard work and imagination, to come together as a community, feels quite important. I am always impressed by the variety of awards the Writers' Trust gives out every year. Emerging writers can win the RBC Bronwyn Wallace Award. Writers in mid-career receive acclaim in a range of genres, and of course the major prizes in fiction and non-fiction reward the best books of the year. And in scanning the list this year, I did have some ideas for awards that we could create for next year. Like maybe next year we should give out the Extreme Patience Award for the partner of the writer who did not divorce them during the final months of their book writing process, who stood at the door to their office and threw power bars at their feet, gave them like kind of worrisome thumbs up while they hissed and growled. There could be the Golden Therapist Award. Every year we could give it to a publicist, most woken up to late-night phone calls about bad reviews or tour schedules, and who still manages to make it to your event the next morning and hold your hand. Maybe we could give a reward for awards jurors. Instead of a statue, the award could be a back cushion with lumbar support for reading 140 books in 10 months. There's also maybe a tolerance award we could give for the coffee shop owner who allows novelists to sit for hours sipping one coffee, working away at that rough draft. Because it takes a village, right? So over the course of this evening, we'll be highlighting the individual, foundation, and corporate benefactors that make tonight's various prizes possible. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a few additional sponsors and partners that help support the Writers' Trust Awards. They are our media partners, the Globe and Mail and CBC Books, our government partner, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and our partners Chatelaine, Hello Canada, Indigo, Maclean's, Quilling Choir, Steam Whistle Brewing, Toronto International Festival of Authors, and White Pine Pictures. A thank you to them for the role they play in making tonight happen. And thank you as well to our guests for joining us tonight for tonight's celebration of Canadian literary excellence. Are you ready to begin? The first 3 awards presented tonight are unlike any other awards in Canada. They aren't given for a particular novel or memoir, for the year's best poetry collection, or for picture book. They are career-based awards. And in that sense, writers themselves hold them more dearly. To honor a career is to say that great writing matters, that remarkable talent stands out, and that dedication, development, and perseverance shine through. Each of these 3 awards is valued at $25,000 and given to a writer in mid-career. The prize juries work with complete independence, scouting, reviewing, and selecting the eventual prize winner. They pick the writer whose work shines the brightest and whose next book they are dying to read. To present tonight's first career award, the Writers' Trust Vicki Metcalf Award for Literature for Young People, please welcome a writer of adult and children's literature, a past Writers' Trust Prize finalist, and juror for this year's prize, Q McClear.
More than half a century ago, Vicki Metcalf had the wonderful idea to create a prize to celebrate the writing of literature for Canadian children. The award has since recognized unique writers who take creative risks and produce inspiring literary work. Reviewing the list of past winners, which can be found at the back of the event program, I see writers I enjoyed in childhood, writers who've influenced my own work, and writers I've shared with my own children. It's an honor to add this year's winner to that list. On behalf of the Writers' Trust, I'm grateful to the Metcalf Foundation for making this prize possible. The foundation is dedicated to helping Canadians imagine and build a just, healthy, and creative society. And I'm delighted that Writers of Literature for Young People are part of that vision. I was lucky to serve on this year's jury with Deirdre Baker and Glenn Husser, astute readers, genial conversationalists, and all Lumbar supported. Combining great personal warmth, humor, and a passion for Black history, this year's prize winner has gifted us a dazzling, complex-bodied literature. Working against a sense of resolution that seems so obligatory in a lot of writing for children, his novels refuse easy redemptive arcs, bearing witness instead to the emotional and behavioral afterlife of love, tragedy, and violence. This commitment to truths and a timescape that take us beyond simple endings sets him apart and demonstrates his deep respect for young people. To this year's winner, we thank you for your wonderfully imagined stories, for the way you capture characters as richly embodied subjects, for your honoring of Black struggle and survival, for your wicked and subversive sense of humor. You remind us of the power of seemingly small acts of tenderness and beauty against the vicious sweep of history, but also of the role of young people and stories in beckoning new futures. The winner of the 2018 Vicki Metcalf Award for Literature for Young People is Christopher Paul Curtis.
Thank you very, very much. I know it's kind of customary to say it's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to be here, and it's very true. But it's more true in my case, I think, in many cases, because I live in Windsor, and I've got a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And I called home, and it sounded like the Civil War was restarting. So thank you for having me here. Writing is a solitary career. You do it yourself, but there are kind of signposts and dates that are very important. The first one for me was 9/15/72, and that was the day that I hired into Flint, Michigan's Fisher Body, plant number 1, where for 13 years I hung doors. And it's important to me as a writer because during breaks, I'd work for half an hour, then I'd be off for half an hour. I wrote. And that kind of sustained me. I learned that writing was something that I loved to do. And I practiced my craft every day. So for 13 years, I did that. The next date that's important was January the 11th, 1995. And that was the day that I received my rejection letter for the Watsons Go to Birmingham. And it was a personalized rejection letter, which is supposed to be like a coup or something. But it felt particularly brutal to me that she spoke it to me exactly. I would prefer to have something that was more generic. The Third date was January 16th, 1996, and that's when I got a phone call from my editor, Wendy Lamb, saying even though my book didn't win the contest they were having, they were going to publish it anyway. Now I have added November 7th, 2018 to the list of days that are a real signpost in my career as a writer. Awards like this are extremely important, particularly for people, for writers and books for young people. A lot of times we're kind of cast off to the side, but I like to look at us as really the beginners. We pull the young people in, we teach them about reading and hopefully develop a love for reading in them. So I'd just like to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. This is beautiful, and I've got a new date now. Thank you.
To present tonight's second career award, the Lattner Writers Trust Poetry Prize, please welcome the author of 3 poetry collections, a frequent collaborator across artistic disciplines, and juror for this year's prize, Moez Sereni.
There are many outstanding prizes for poetry in Canada, but until recently there wasn't a national award like this one that recognized a poet at the stage of their career when they built upon early breakthroughs and are coming into the height of their power. I'd like to thank and acknowledge the Lattner Family Foundation for creating and funding this prize and for their commitment to celebrating some remarkable voices in Canadian poetry. It was a pleasure to be on this year's jury with such a breadth of talent across the country. It was a daunting task to select one person. I want to thank Wade Compton and Sylvia Labrie for their insights, their thoughtfulness, and the care they brought to our many conversations. We composed a response to this year's recipient. We wanted to summarize some of what we thought and what we felt about this poet. And we began with a quote from their work. And I could live my life this way, in strokes of work tree, glow tops, orange trails, leftover hair, a body's sonic fictions. This year's prize winner savors and vies with not solely the materiality of language, but language's subjective materiality. For him, each context and uttering body manifests an original materiality, the precision of nature, anatomy, the names of friends, the contours of British Columbia or Poland, the daily ritualized cycles of parenthood and the cosmos. His associations, insinuations, discoveries, tensions, and mysterious propulsive force, these manifestations of his consciousness are wondrous. I could live drawing curtains, looking out, of sore water, transcendentals, down to morning, again to bind me in, joyride dress, tie me to light veins. The winner of the 2018 Lattner's Writers Trust Poetry Prize is Jordan Scott.
I always hoped one day I'd have welcoming music like that. That was really fantastic. I'm really humbled and to be here in this moment, and I have to thank the Lattner family for their incredible generosity. Between working full time and raising a family. Poetry is always present, but it often occupies those small moments. after tuck-in or between naps. And so this award that creates more space for poetry in my life. And I could not be more grateful. I'd also like to thank the jurors, Wade Compton and Moez Serhani and Sylvia Legree. I respect and admire your work so much, and that this came from you. That just leaves me really overwhelmed and speechless. I'd also like to thank the Writers' Trust for treating me so well and for all the work that they do for literature. Coach House Books has been my publisher for a long time, and I'm so thankful to have found a home with such an incredible press. I specifically have to thank Alana Wilcox for your tireless support and friendship. Alana always refers to me as being part of the stable, so I'm not really sure what that but I'll take it. It's really nice. For me, one of the best parts of being a poet are the friendships I've made. I would not be in this position without the kindness of mentors and the generosity of my friends. There isn't enough time to thank you all, but I want you to know that you are loved, and I can't thank you for everything you've done for me. I want to specifically thank my mentor, your friend and collaborator, Stephen Collis. And as my son would say, infinity thank yous to my wife, Summer, and our two boys, Sasha and Rowan, for such a full, loving and joyfully chaotic life. And finally, I'd like to say that this award is for my mom, Viesha Cuiava, who came to Canada as a refugee and filled our home with poetry, who every day slipped poems into my lunch bag, and who sat beside me when I wrote my first poem. So this is for her. Thank you so much.
To present tonight's third career award, the Writers' Trust Anglo Findlay Award, please welcome Arts Consultant Extraordinaire and the new Chair of the Writers' Trust of Canada, Carrie Cullen.
Good evening. All of us at the Writers' Trust have a particular and special attachment to the career awards we present tonight. The Career Awards help to strengthen our society by celebrating and rewarding the voices that represent the depth and diversity of Canadian talent, book after book after book. It's a particular honor to present the Writers' Trust Anglo Findlay Award, which recognizes a writer of fiction in mid-career. This award is a magnificent literary accolade, and it comes with a healthy chunk of change. But more than that, it is, for tonight's recipient, a vote of confidence in her abilities and an encouragement to let her voice flourish. Before I reveal this year's winner, I'd like to thank this year's jury, Devin Code, Billy Livingston, and Tessa McWatt. It could not have been an easy choice. There are a great number of writers in this country who could be and should be recipients of this prize. I applaud the jury for the thoroughness and thoughtfulness they brought to their decision. About this year's prize winner, they wrote, "Her fictions immerse readers in worlds where the human and the natural are inextricable. From the bogs of Manitoba to the rivers of the Amazon rainforest, from the wilderness of Utah to the ravines of Toronto, her characters live lives entwined with natural wonders that are as complex, varied, dark, and beautiful as human experience itself. Her writing is polished, intelligent, and starkly original. She writes unflinchingly about violence, cruelty, and greed, and with equal authority about redemption, reverence, and love. We're very fortunate to have her wise and compelling stories and look forward to more to come. Please join me in congratulating the winner of the 2018 Writers' Trust Engel Findlay Award, Elisa York.
Hey, I'm starting with the usual proviso, which is if I become verklempt, talk amongst yourselves. All right. I need these now, because it's a mid-career thing. It's all becoming clear to me now. All right. This is a big honor. It's big enough to share, I think. So I'm going to start with a classic. Honor thy father and thy mother. Verklempt. Amongst yourselves. My father made a mantra for me and my brother. You can do anything, you can be anything. Okay, in my case, I think he was hoping for a lawyer. He came around. And my mother did many things, but what I'm thinking about tonight is that she showed me what a woman writing looks like. And then there's the chosen family. So, you know, writers, we come up against many walls, right? And the tallest, highest, scariest walls are the ones inside. And my husband, Clive, over and over has led me to the doors in those walls. So, much honor to you, sir. And on the subject of family, I want to honor the Writers' Trust. These events always kind of feel like family events, I find. Writers' Trust, you build us up. You give us time. You help us to believe. And as part of that, I want to honor the juries as well. All the juries who made tonight possible. Your readers, your writers, your book lovers, your book luggers. That's a lot of books. Bibliophiles, you're my people. I want to honor my agent, Ellen Levine, another big, ardent reader, a woman deeply engaged with her writers and their work. And of course, I want to honor the good people at Penguin Random House. They are too many for me to name here. But they work day and night to make beautiful books and also to make a really big house feel like home. For years now. I will name one though. Anne Collins, verklempt. Your brain is a wonder, and it is matched only by your monumental heart. Secretariat had nothing on you. Few people have mentioned already writing is solitary work. It has been made immeasurably less so by the company of my peers, close friends, some of you here tonight, colleagues, and those of you I've only met through your work. Just knowing you're out there agonizing over semicolons like me. God, what a bunch of nutters we are. Knowing that I'm part of something bigger, like a long, lovely wave. Imagine if your wave was the last one to break on the shore. How lonely that would be. I want to honor the talented writers who are rolling in now, as well as the ones who are still out there taking shape in the sea. And speaking of shape, you know this word, sensei? For years, I understood only that it meant teacher, but I recently learned a more accurate translation, which is the one who comes before. Dedicated, devoted writers, I want to honor all of them, all of us. Thank you.
True, we all are nutters. That's lovely. To present the Writers' Trust McClellan and Stewart Journey Prize, please welcome the author of the blog Pickle Me This and the novel Mitzi Bites, Carrie Clare.
Lacey, you made me cry. Thank you, Zoe. I'm happy to be here tonight to announce the winner of the 30th Annual Journey Prize. It was such an honor to serve on this year's jury, and I would like to thank my fellow jurors, Sharon Bala and Zoe Lee Peterson, who I learned so much from, for their thoughtful reading and insightful observations as we debated, considered, and reconsidered what we had read. For the past 3 decades, the Journey Prize has been a harbinger, a sampling of the literary talent emerging in this country. And this year's stories and their authors, with their assured new voices, represent the future of Canadian literature, and the future is exciting. This prize is one of the most significant monetary awards given to emerging writers in Canada. The finalists each received $1,000 and an immeasurable boost to their careers. A prize of $2,000 will be given to the literary magazine that published the winning story, and the winner receives $10,000. And this is all made possible by James A. Michener's generous donation of his Canadian royalty earnings from his 1988 novel Journey. Each year, McClellan and Stewart publishes the Journey Prize Stories, an anthology that constitutes the long list for the prize. Go get your copy. Because the authors included in its pages today will be the stars of tomorrow. Yeah. The finalists of the 2018 Journey Prize are Shashi Bhatt for Mute, published by the Dalhousie Review. Greg Brown for Love, published by Pulp Literature. And Liz Harmer for Never Prosper, published by the New Quarterly. To all 3 finalist authors, congratulations. And the winner of the $10,000 Journey Prize is Shashi Bhatt for Mute, published by the Dalhousie Review.
I spend a lot of time thinking about short stories. As a creative writing instructor and literary magazine editor, that's most of my life. And so winning this award in particular, it really feels like something special to me. When I wrote this story about some bad stuff that happened to me in Baltimore about 10 years ago, I never really expected that anyone was going to read it, and feel that way about most of the short stories I write. And shortly after the Journey Prize anthology was released, I received an email from a woman on the other side of the country from me who just said that my story had resonated with her. And I'm really grateful to McClellan and Stewart and the Writers' Trust for making that kind of connection possible. Thank you to everyone involved with the Journey Prize, the 3 jury members, Sharon Bala, Carrie Clare, and Zoe Lee Peterson, and the lovely Anita Chong. Thank you to the Dalhousie Review for publishing my story in the first place. And to my fellow finalists, Greg Brown and Liz Harmer, I'm really honored to be in your company. Thank you.
He is the author of the recently published novel Up From Freedom, as well as a prize-winning translator, and was a good friend to the late Matt Cohen, after whom this prize is named. Please welcome Wayne Grady.
Thank you, Zoe. For 18 years, it's hard to believe that, but for 18 years, the Writers' Trust Matt Cohen Award has been presented in memory of a brilliant writer and a strong advocate of Canadian literature. Matt Cohen was an internationally celebrated writer, a founding member of the Writers' Union of Canada, and the author of more than 30 books. He helped put Canada on the world literary map. Upon his death in 1999, the Writers' Trust began to present in Matt's name an annual award to a writer who has made a significant and lasting contribution to Canadian literature, and who has lived the writing life. Before announcing this year's winner, I would like to thank Marla and David Lieberg, who are here tonight. They are an astonishing couple, ardent readers, dedicated philanthropists, and simply good people. Without their enthusiasm and commitment, this award would not be possible. This is the 9th year that they have supported this prize, and we remain extremely grateful for their continued generosity and friendship. Please thank them. I was pleased to serve on this year's Winners Selection Committee, along with Patsy Aldana, Graham Gibson, and Don Oravec. And this year, we are proud to announce that the 2018 Matt Cohen Award in celebration of the writing life goes to David Bergen. David was born in British Columbia but grew up in Niederville, Manitoba. After attending Red River College, he began teaching English and creative writing at Kelvin High School in Winnipeg. In 1993, he published his first book, a collection of short stories, Sitting Opposite My Brother, which became the finalist for the Manitoba Book Award. His first novel, A Year of Lesser, appeared in 1996 and won the McNally Robinson Book of the Year Award. When The Case of Lena S., which came out in 2002, was shortlisted for the Governor General's Award, its success encouraged David to quit his teaching job and devote himself full-time to the writing life. Since then, he has published 6 more novels, which works out to about a novel every 2.5 years, including in 2005 the Scotiabank Killer Award winner, The Time in Between, about 2 siblings who traveled to Vietnam in search of their father. As Sheila Rogers has said, she loves reading David's books because I never know where he's going to take me. In novel after novel, David Bergen has explored some of the most important issues of his time, from such internal questions as what duties children owe to their parents, to the eternal questions such as what does a society owe its citizens. His most recent novel, Stranger, appeared in 2016 and takes us to Guatemala, and to a not-so-futuristic dystopia in America. Alex Hawley, reviewing Stranger in the Globe and Mail, called it inventive and electrifying, with characters that are fresh out of the literary kitchen, strong and calm and terrifically drawn. Please join me in welcoming David Bergen.
I'm not sure why I'm the only one that had to stand up here. Thank you, Wayne. That's very generous. And I want to thank Wayne and Patsy and Graham and Don, who were part of the selection. These are generous words. Last night at the Writers' Trust dinner, Carrie Cullen described the importance of putting money into the hands of writers. David and Marla Lieberg have sponsored the Matt Cohen Award for, I say a decade here, but it's 9 years. Hopefully it'll be longer. They are the ones who put the money into my hands this year. Thank you, Marla and David. Sharing a meal and talking books has made this award real and intimate. I want to thank the Writers' Trust, all of you who work in the office and those who are on the board. You are the reason I'm standing here today. The celebration of the writing life is also a celebration of a reading life. And in my reading life, when I was young, there was really no guide. I bowed to a potpourri of Trixie Belden, Zane Grey, the Hardy Boys, religious books from the church library, the King James Bible, Enid Blyton, the back of the cornflakes box. Eventually, I discovered Margaret Lawrence's The Fire Dwellers, not because it was Lawrence, but simply because the title attracted me. Then came Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Neville Shutes On the Beach, Lucy by Jamaica Kincaid, Cormac McCarthy, Atwood's Cat's Eye, Knut Hamsun, The Parables of Kierkegaard, Updike, Annie Dillard, Lady with Lapdog. This is only a smattering, but the best of these filled me with envy, and then goaded me into a poor form of imitation. I didn't know how to write a novel, and so my first novel was a collection of chapters that stood upon the foundation of a particular place, and a voice which I learned later was free and direct. I didn't have a name for what I was doing, but I had learned it from Rabbit Run, and so began the making of books. What I've learned: 1, find a good first reader who won't put up with any bullshit. I found that with Mary, with whom I've lived for 40 years. 2, don't take anything for granted. 3, always be thankful for that moment when a story lands and the back of your head tingles and you know that you have caught something and you pray that it will flourish. 4, know that this might never happen again. 5, you're never as good or as bad as people say you are. 6, writing is play, and play is the path to the inner world. The writing life is a good life, if you measure a good life by pleasure of the senses and the stretching of the mind, and not by lucre or compensation, though I will be getting some lucre tonight, for which I'm extremely grateful. The heart, in the strange world that we live in as writers, sometimes gets lost. There are bills to pay, milk to buy, meals to cook, one's ego to retrieve, completion to shoot for, but in the shooting for, we lose sight of what got us to this place. When all the noise of publishing, the striving for recognition and sales, and the tedium of self-promotion has faded away, we are left with the blank page, and the quiet, and the fear, and the joy, and the pleasure. The heart opens, and the pen leaps. I have been very lucky. Thank you.
Before we present the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize, we'd like to give you an opportunity to meet and learn more about the 5 finalists. A couple of weeks ago, each writer sat down and talked to us about their nominated book. Have a look at what they said.
The point of childhood and kind of the dawning of certain adult understandings that ultimately get forced upon you at a certain age. I think my favorite part of this book is that I allowed myself the opportunity to try and go back to that time in my life or in a kid's life and the innocence that's there. And also it's danger and it's fear and it's magic. And so it was fun for however many hours a day that I got to work on it to try and put myself back in that place in time. Nicholas, did I ever tell you that there are friendly ghosts? Right here in our fair city, yes, it's true. They live in the space between waking and dream, and if we know where to look, we can spot them. Just before you fall asleep, you'll see a shimmering.
The premise of Washington Black is that it follows 6 years in the life of an 11-year-old slave boy called George Washington Black. And he was born on a plantation in Barbados, and so has known no other life but one of hardship and toil. And he's very surprised to find himself one day taken to live in the quarters of his new master's brother, who's a man called Christopher Wilde. Christopher Wilde, he's a gentleman scientist, he's a naturalist, explorer, inventor, and an abolitionist. And it's through his removing Washington from his field work that Washington starts to realize that he has gifts to offer the world. Christopher Wilde is from one class of people with a certain history, and Washington Black is from another. And what's interesting is that the relationship can never be one of equals, and this makes it an impossible situation for them. I'm hoping that readers take away a sense of having lived alongside this young man through some very crucial years of his life, and having felt for him, but also maybe seeing how he's like them, how their own lives intersect with his, but just to have a sense of a life fully lived. How luminous the world was in the shallows. I could see all the golden light of the dying morning. I could see the debris in it stirring and coming alive. Blue, purple, gold cilia turned in the watery yellow shafts of light slicing down. In the gilded blur, I caught the flashing eyes of shrimp, alien and sinewy.
Initially, I just wanted to start a book about rituals, burials, but then I decided maybe I should do it with excess, many deaths. And then I thought it has to be during the war, and then the war led me back to Beirut. Beirut Hellfire Society is a story of a family of undertakers. Pavlov inherits the business and make connection with this secret society who are looking to have alternative burials. I think the biggest challenge is when you embark on a topic like death is not to fall into the melodramatic. It's to keep the sadness present, but also infuse some humor. There's no defined morality in this book. I don't believe that literature is about morality, but I think what the reader should take is how I presented many possibilities. Rifles voiced their menacing bangs in the distance. Battles are underway, Pavlov said out loud. Cadavers would again glide along the burial roads, wings folded unlike birds, feet joined together unlike soldiers' boots, faces immobile unlike actors, powdered, preserved, packaged and delivered to be consumed by earth, gnawed by vermin, and vanish again.
What if our environment became so bad that the wildlife didn't want to live anymore? It felt appropriate to apply that question to ourselves as individuals and as a species, just questions about self-destruction and the ways that we deal with that. Land Mammals and Sea Creatures is about a woman who returns home to take care of her father, who has been suffering from PTSD for decades and whose own health is failing. And at the same time, there's this secondary storyline of the wildlife in the town committing suicide. So when I started thinking about the idea of self-destruction, I started thinking about the people that suffer from that the most. And there's sort of this romanticized version of self-destruction that you see in pop culture and in media. And then there's this very real version that's experienced by ordinary people. The most challenging part to write for this book, I think, was trying to marry the fantastical with the realistic. The two storylines didn't always coexist very naturally, so it took some effort to try to get them to fit naturally while still remaining in their own space, in their own worlds. I hope that readers take away from this book that not only is it important to preserve life, both as individuals and as a species, but also to preserve the quality of life, and that it isn't as worthwhile doing the first unless we also do the second. The list of events that could disrupt a calm day had shape-shifted since she was last home in Port Braid. Once again, the rules had to be relearned. Marty's triggers developed like allergies. Some were long-term, bird bangers, air brakes, metal-tinged smoke, and others came and went in a matter of years. The smell of Julie's hair straightener, the rattle of Boggle.
The premise of Dear Evelyn is that of a 70-year-long marriage, that's 7 decades, between two people who, one might say, are possibly at least incompatible. I leave that up to the reader to decide. But certainly their relationship is a very complicated and difficult one, not a straightforward love affair at all. My parents in the last years of their life became very argumentative and embattled, and at the same time Mum, clearing out the house, presented to us all the love letters that my father had written to her during the Second World War. I became very curious and motivated to imagine my way through that journey, which I decided to do using fiction, and to ask myself questions about how come one thing had become the other, what were the stages of it, was it inevitable, and was love still hiding in that embattled last phase. I was using my father's letters with his permission in the story, and at the point where I found myself starting to edit them and cut bits out and then to write new bits in, the thing took off and I was free of the so-called facts and actually inventing the story. Most of us are in some kind of important, intimate relationship, or we want to be, or we have been, or we're curious about other people's close, intimate relationships. And I just want people to go away with a sort of heightened awareness and perhaps concern and care for what is between them and their other person. I can't have you back, Evelyn had told him. She was always very blunt, a good quality in many ways. And of course, it must have been very hard for her to say, sorry, or I hate doing this, would have sweetened the pill, but there it was, give her credit, I can't have you back.
Writers Trust Fiction Prize, please welcome the Editor-in-Chief of Maclean's Magazine, Allison Earls.
Hi there. I'm honored to be here on behalf of Rogers to present this year's prize. I'm really humbled to be in your presence. And I had a more corporate-y introduction planned, but I've been so moved tonight as a journalist, by hearing your acceptance speeches, the emotion and the passion, the incredible writing that you've delivered to us tonight. I wanted to instead just say thank you. This is way better than any journalism award ceremony I've ever been at. I've been crying for the last half hour. So back to business. I know from our books coverage in Maclean's that this enormous $50,000 prize means so much to the literary community, and that the reputation of the Writers' Trust Award as our national talent spotter is richly deserved. That reputation, of course, has been built over many years by hardworking, visionary juries, and this year is no exception. Our profuse thanks to the readers of 128 books, our amazing 2018 jury. They are Anne Y.K. Choi, Mireille Silkoff, Robert Reesma. So we'll go through the amazing finalists. Craig Davidson for the Saturday Night Ghost Club, published by Knopf Canada. Essie Dujan for Washington Black, published by Patrick Crean Editions. Rawi Haj for Beirut Hellfire Society, published by Knopf Canada. Jen Neal for Land Mammals and Sea Creatures, published by ECW Press. And Kathy Page for Dear Evelyn, published by Biblioasis. Congratulations again to all 5 authors. Please join me in applauding them all. The winner of the 2018 Rogers Writers' Trust Fiction Prize is, oh, for heaven's sake, Kathy Page for Dear Evelyn, published by Biblioasis.
Speeches take a turn for the worse. I am completely unprepared for this. A word that comes to mind, though, is from my obvious British origins, and it is gobsmacked. Gobsmacked. And also, of course, I am deeply honoured. The phone call when one's on the shortlist comes as a complete surprise, and it's astounding to feel that people you don't know have read your book and liked it this much. We should be more confident, but we never are. And I have been fairly convinced for the entire period between then and now that this would not happen. So mainly my speech is about thanking. I want to thank, of course, my editor, John Metcalf, who has helped me struggle through what was quite a difficult book, as you saw in the video, wrestling it away from its inspiration into its final form. It took actually about 8 years. And my editor in Britain, Tara Tobler, also had a really significant contribution with another small press called And Other Stories. Made me think. And I really want to thank absolutely everyone at Biblioasis in Windsor. Dan Wells is here, and they're all probably watching. So thank you. This is an unusual book for me in the level at which it was rooted in personal things, and I want to thank the dead, my parents, and my sisters, and
and my husband, who of course has encouraged me and often put himself second in terms of his own creative projects, which hopefully will end at some point. So I think I'm actually going to stop there because I might embarrass us all by flooding with tears. Oh no, I mustn't, because I should also thank everyone at the Writers' Trust and the sponsor, Rogers, and of course the jurors, and all of you for being here. Thank you very much.
Before we present this evening's final prize, we'd like to give you an opportunity to learn more about the 5 finalists for this year's Hillary Weston Writers' Trust Prize for Nonfiction. And who better to hear that from than the 3 writers who selected the prize finalists? Let's have a look at what the prize jury said.
When I first learned I was going to be a juror, I said, how many books are there? And there were quite a few. There were like well over 100, and they kept coming and kept coming.
Forming a short list was very difficult because the standard was just that high.
I was really surprised and excited, really delighted by the state of Canadian nonfiction. I don't know if I've ever been on a jury where there's been so many excellent books.
What I want in any book that I'm reading, I want it to be, in most cases, I want it to be funny. I want it to have humor. I want it to also have poignancy. I also want to be sort of surprised and shocked by books.
I was looking for something I hadn't seen before necessarily, or a familiar story told in a fresh way.
The craft, that all has to be there, of course, but it's also knowing that the author had to write that book, that there was something in them that made them need that book to exist in the world. Antigone Undone by Will Aitken is a book about the way that art doesn't leave us, the way that thousands-year-old work can still shake a person, even cause almost a breakdown in this case.
And it's about a woman's resistance to power and to the patriarchy, so it's pretty relevant right now, I think.
On stage, it felt so immediate, it might have been written yesterday. Look at what these men are doing
to me, Antigone cries, encompassing the plight of the powerless through all of history. Antigone opened my eyes to the constancy of human suffering and said to me, nothing changes, nothing ever will. And this is how I tumbled headlong into despair.
What surprised me most about this book was just the sincere and eloquent expression of an individual artistic spirit.
I loved that Will Aitken was not afraid to be really weird with this book, that he wasn't afraid to build, really curate, actually, a literary experience that wasn't like anything I'd read before.
It's made up of a diary, a travelogue, an interview, some criticism. So it's a very original, unique form that was successful.
I thought that was the great trick that Aitken pulled off. All Things Consoled by Elizabeth Hay breaks your heart. It certainly broke mine. It's about a writer who's trying to sort of track her parents' journey from life to death, and it's as simple as that, and it's as relevant as that.
She is willing to share some of their more difficult and complicated and, sometimes unpleasant or even cruel aspects of their character. And yet at the same time, that is part of her tribute to them, that she loves them whole.
Their lives came tumbling down during that summer in 2008 when Obama won for the first time and the world seemed bright with second chances.
The morning after the election, a Wednesday, I went to do errands in the sunshine, returning home in the early afternoon to a message on the answering machine. His spine-straightening voice, the basso profundo that used to make students snap to attention from Georgian Bay to Whirl Creek. Liz, call your dad as soon as you can.
Elizabeth Hay's writing is sentence for sentence, just on.
As soon as you open the book, you know that you're in the hands of a very skilled author.
Every page is like a masterclass in how to observe.
It will just rip your heart out, basically.
Heartberries by Therese Marie Mayette is a story about growing up on a reservation. It's a story about growing up with a huge amount of trauma and what it means to try and move beyond that, try to find love in a world that doesn't let you forget.
She's telling a very tragic story, a very difficult story, and it's full of both self-condemnation and condemnation for the society around her and for the lover that she addresses the book to.
She is very determined to tell us a hard story her own way, even though people may not like it, may be uncomfortable.
It's a remarkable piece of writing. It's very poetic, very lyrical.
It's very, very quiet. It's very unadorned, and it's uncompromising. It cuts like a knife.
You might not notice how beautifully crafted it is as you're reading it, because it feels almost like a confessional.
I just thought it was a wonderful read.
My story was maltreated. The words were too wrong and ugly to speak. I tried to tell someone my story, but he thought it was a hustle. He marked it as solicitation. The man took me shopping with his pity. I was silenced by charity, like so many Indians. I kept my hand out. My story became the hustle.
In Praise of Blood by Judy Reaver claims that there were actually 2 Rwandan genocides in 1994.
Nobody knows this story, or very few people know this story. Reaver's uncovered something that has been covered up for 2 decades now.
This book changed my understanding of the Rwandan genocide, totally. There's one narrative that has been fed to us about how that genocide took place and who's guilty and who's innocent. And In Praise of Blood turned my understanding on its head.
It's a very brave book of investigative journalism, and so it's that balancing act between hardcore journalism and personal anguish and personal risk that makes the book very hard to put down.
It's a stunning story. It totally controverts everything we've been taught to believe about what happened. It's incredibly brave, and it's very Canadian.
Elise and her baby were Rwandan refugees in Zaire. For more than 6 months, they were human prey, hunted
across swamps and hostile jungle. The soldiers chasing them were Tutsi forces from Paul Kagame's army. His troops, backed by allies in Uganda, invaded in October 1996 and attacked Hutu refugee camps inside Zaire's border, an act that formidable intelligentsia in the West deemed inevitable and wholly justified.
The Woo Woo by Lindsay Wong is a memoir about an upwardly mobile Asian family trying to work their way into the Canadian mainstream, while several members of the family suffers from mental illness.
This is a dysfunctional family on steroids. So we get to see all of that, and we get to see it through very honest and very funny eyes.
Lindsay Wong is not afraid of being messy on the page. She is masterfully crafting her story, but she's really also laying it all out there, and I really admired that.
It's that bold sort of attitude that I'm going to tell you everything, whether you like it or not.
I've never heard another voice like this in Canadian literature or anywhere. It's very raw, it's hilarious, it's also kind of distant and impersonal, and then also at the same time intense. And it's very big, like not loud, but very big. Takes up the whole page.
My mother's delusion started early one morning. It all began as she had fumbled for baby formula in the pantry at my brother's feeding time. She later told me the next morning
that there had been a hot, staticky voice in her head that seemed to possess her. "Look over here," the voice had demanded. and my mother's eyeballs and neck robotically swiveled to the doorway as if by pure synaptic sorcery. "You're okay," the voice reassured her. "You're going to be absolutely A-okay."
When I first learned I was going to be a juror, I said, "How many books are there?" And there were quite a few. There were like well over 100, and they kept coming and kept coming.
Forming a short list was very difficult because the standard was just...
She was appointed a member of the Order of Canada in 2003, and in 2015 was invested by Her Majesty the Queen as a Commander in the Royal Victorian Order. To present the final prize of the evening, please welcome the Honourable Hilary Weston.
Good evening, everybody. I find the whole experience absolutely breathtaking, watching this marvelous films about those incredible books. And for me, this evening marks the 8th time I will have the privilege of announcing the winner of the Hilary Weston Writers' Trust Prize for Non-Fiction. It really is an honour to be able to celebrate the work of Canada's finest writers of true stories through the annual awarding of this prize, and to help these exemplary works of non-fiction to find new readers in Canada and beyond. This year's jurors have selected a short list of books by remarkably talented authors with their varied experiences and expertise. Their books explore difficult truths, delve into fraught relationships, and praise the intrinsic value of art. The 5 books are remarkable, and the task of the jury in selecting a winner could not have been an easy one. At this point, I would like to recognize the prize jurors whose hard work and thoughtful attention were instrumental in selecting the year's very best Canadian non-fiction. And on behalf of the Writers' Trust of Canada and myself, a big thank you to Michael Harris, Donna Bailey-Nurse, and Joel Janowski. Once again, the finalists are Will Aitken for Antigone Undone, Juliette Binoche, Anne Carson, Ivo Van Hove, and The Art of Resistance, published by the University of Regina Press. Elizabeth Hay for All Things Consoled, a daughter's memoir, published by McClellan and Stewart. Therese Marie Mayette for Heartberries, a memoir published by Doubleday Canada. Judy Reaver for In Praise of Blood, The Crimes of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, published by Random House Canada. And Lindsay Wong for The Woo Woo, How I Survived Ice Hockey, Drug Raids, Demons, and My Crazy Chinese Family, published by Arsenal Pulp Press. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has come. The winner of 2018 Hilary Weston, who is she? Hilary Weston's Trust Prize for Non-Fiction is Elizabeth Hay, All Things Considered, published by Helen Still.
This is thrilling. First of all, I want to congratulate my fellow nominees. My brother taught me how to say congratulations. He lives in Quebec, and you say chapeau. So I raise my hat to the other nominees, and their terrific books. Congratulations. And a writer does write alone in a room, but it certainly takes a room full of people to bring a book into being. And I had a very wonderful editor with this book, Martha Canyu-Forstner at McClellan Stewart. And it was Martha who saw the shape of the book and raised my parents into the light, and I'm incredibly grateful to her. And I'm grateful to everybody at McClellan and Stewart who worked and works on behalf of this book, and McClellan and Stewart and the larger Penguin Random House Canada for working on behalf of books, period. I have a terrific agent, Jackie Kaiser, and I thank her. And the Writers' Trust is great. You know, how wonderful you are. Thank you for all of your work. And thank you, Hilary Weston, for your generosity. It's wonderful when people are generous on behalf of the arts. I can't convey my approval enough. And I want to thank my family. In particular, my date for the night, my daughter, Sochi Fried, who held my clammy hand in her nice warm one. So thank you so much.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. This was a wonderful evening. And I would like to let you know that if you return to the lobby, there will be a post-reception with food and drinks. And we would also like to invite the winners to come up for some photographs. So thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of the week.